welcome back to another episode of Why I Love BNI, your podcast spotlighting different businesses and different chapters on what they love about their business, being a part of the BNI family, and how it's helped their business. So today I'm super excited to have my guest Matthew with us today. Matthew, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Well, Matt and I got connected through a mutual BNI connection. And then from there, we had a great one-on-one where I learned so much about what he does. And then I checked him out online and it's some really great stuff out there. So I'll make sure I have the link down in the description. People can check it out. But first, why don't you just tell us just a little bit about what you do and how you help people? And then I'll probably get specific and nerdy about it.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so I work in video production. So what that means is that I help my clients to grow their brand visibility and brand authority online and on social media through the use of video and other multimedia assets.
That's amazing. So, can you break down like what a specific day or what does a specific project look like for you? Because I think people hear video production and it can mean a multitude of things nowadays.
Yep. So I mean, right now, we're in a world where people are consuming more and more content online on social media. Is like what were we doing? Just in the past hour, I'm sure a good portion of us either watching or listening were probably on their phones, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, X, whatever, engaging or watching or consuming some form of social media content,
Hmm.
whether that is, for entertainment purposes, for educational purposes, research purposes, whatever the case may be, content is king.
Hmm.
We've all heard that saying. Um, but through what I do in video production and helping my clients, I come in, look at what the client wants to do with video, or like just kind of in general, what are their goals? Is it more exposure? Is it converting more leads? Is it getting more leads? Is it getting more exposure so they can get more leads so they can convert more leads? Like just looking at the big picture of what it is they want, and then we kind of look at how do we create a strategy through video to achieve that.
Hmm.
So like an example of this would be, if you're a real estate agent, the very heavily saturated market here in the state of Florida, as far as real estate agents go. So
Right.
how do you stand out? Well, people do business with people or businesses that they know, like, and trust. And video is one way that you can leverage to get people to know, like, and trust you. So, using the example of realtor, maybe that's, market updates. If the Fed just raised interest rates by whatever amount that they raise them or drop them, what does that mean for you as a buyer? What does that mean for you as a seller? Right.
Hmm.
Um, if you're a marketing agency, it's like, okay, what is not having your website optimized for Google search costing you, right?
Right.
And being able to address those things that most business owners probably aren't, like, especially if you're in a B2B market, what most business owners aren't thinking about, because a lot of times we're so focused and so entrenched in the day to day of operations that it's like, okay, we most business owners want to grow, but how do we do that? And so video can be a vehicle by which we can systemize and automate the growth process.
Hmm. I think a big, I don't know, block for a lot of people when it comes to something like this is they go, but I don't show up well on video. I can't do well on video, stuff like that. I'm too scared to be in front of video. What do you do when someone says that to you? How do you help them?
Yep. So I deal with that almost on a daily basis.
Sure.
So most of the time that stems from, either not knowing what to say or not feeling like you've communicated your point thoroughly enough.
Hmm.
Right. So and that was even me before I started putting myself on camera. Was It's like, okay, I want to do this, I want to talk about this, but how do I communicate this amount of information and this amount of knowledge in this amount of time?
Right.
And so that's where, the use of a teleprompter actually works out really
Mm,
well, because you can write out a script, or these days, you can have AI write a script for you
sure.
based on whatever topic, based on whatever knowledge base that you want to provide it, whatever that may be, to where you can just look at the camera, read off a teleprompter, and it looks like you're looking straight at the camera. Nobody can tell that you're reading. But using that actually saves a lot of time, because it's much easier for those that might be either averse or struggle in front of the camera. And
Yeah.
a lot of the people that I've worked with that start there, they within like a year, they're like, oh, I'm comfortable. Don't even worry about doing a teleprompter. I got you. I'm like, all right,
Mhm.
cool. And then I just press record and do my thing with the camera, and then they just crush it in front of the camera.
That's awesome, and that's great to hear, and I know, that you also shared that a really important part to you when it comes to filming people and helping them out is you do a lot of, like, directing, coaching behind them along the scenes as well to make them as comfortable as possible. Can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, so I actually come from a film and television background. Pre-COVID, my goal was to, go to LA, go to Atlanta, and work on like the big studio movies, like Dune and everything like that. That was my dream as a
Right.
kid. And
Yeah,
then when the lockdowns hit, Hollywood and several other industries just kind of took a nosedive. And Hollywood to me was already kind of a toxic place, but it just became much grosser than I wanted to be
sure.
a part of. And I was like, I want to pivot. I can either find a new line of work or a new career path, completely different, in which at the time I had been making little short format videos with my friends and my neighbors since middle school. So I was like, I can either throw out the past 7 years of my experience, or I can find a way to leverage these skills and these talents commercially to make a living out of that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to just translate this over to, real estate and marketing and commercial spaces using those same skills. So when people work with me, you're not just getting someone that's going to show up with a camera and a tripod pointed at you and say go. It's like, okay, it's like if you say something, part of the producer screenwriter in me is like, okay, if you word choice is important, right? So are you gonna, if you say one thing, it can mean something, but then it's like, okay, let's maybe say it a different way, try this different wording, and then that gives us a little more flexibility in the editing room, and then it also makes the client feel like we're investing in them in that regard, which is something that I love to do.
Mhm.
I've worked with a lot of people that don't do that, and I'm just
Mm.
like, come on, it's like we're all here to work together and succeed together. So let's help me help you, right? Is
Right.
kind of the approach.
Exactly. Yeah, and you wanna set your clients up for success, especially because I know a lot of small businesses that, they've never done something like this before, and it's
Yep.
totally understandable to be freaked out and scared, and you have the exact script in your head, and maybe if you're not using a teleprompter, and then the camera goes on and you just forget everything, and
Yep.
that's happened to me multiple times. I've done stuff, and I've had to restart podcasts because my intro was just so bad. I'm like, "I cannot like, please, can you give me 2 seconds? Like, I just have to redo this, like, I can't." So, even, professionals like us make a few mistakes sometimes, but that's why you always have a second person with you. So, that's great, and I'm sure we could just talk about this all day. It's a fun topic for me.
Oh,
I love
absolutely,
film,
absolutely.
I love video, obviously, podcasting is a big part of my life, so everything's great, and I think especially when you get, like, you learn everything, you start to watch, like, the big Hollywood stuff, and you're like, "I feel like I could like, I understand what you're doing here, like, I know your technique." Which
Yep.
is
Yep.
yeah.
It's like I can never watch a movie at face value anymore. It's like, okay, why is the, it's like you watch the James Bond movies and it's like, he wears the black suit with the white shirt, and it's like, okay, it's like he's a good guy on the inside, but he has to do bad things on the outside,
Right.
right? So to
Yeah.
speak. And then it's like the bad guys always wear the white suits with the black shirts, and it's like, okay, I see what you're doing here.
Yeah. Or my thing is I'm a big nerd about continuity. I will
Oh
always
yeah.
notice it. And I'll like if I'm watching with my friends, they get so mad at me because I'm like, wait, we have to stop. I have to show you guys. Look at how bad this scene is. And they're like, who cares? And I'm like, but he's not holding the drink the same way anymore.
Exactly,
Anyway.
exactly. The Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones.
That was such a classic example. There's all types of things. I'm trying to think. There's like a lot of Oscar movies nowadays, and they have like the boom mic a little bit in the background, and you can see, and you're like,
Yep.
I don't
It's like,
think
wait a
that's on
minute.
Arrakis. Could be wrong. But yeah, switching gears just a little bit, I'd love for you to share a little bit on, who's the first person that invited you to BNI? How'd you get involved?
So that's actually a really funny story. So I was where I used to live, my neighbor runs a music and a talent management company, and he had gotten hired by the city of Jacksonville Beach to be the MC for the Jax Beach Jazz Festival a few years ago. And he was like, "Hey, I want to get some video of me doing the MC thing." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" So I go get signed up with him. We went and we did the video there. And on one of the breaks where I'm switching out my batteries in the camera, this random guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, like, do you shoot weddings?" And I was like, "I can." I mean, I really don't shoot weddings. I'll typically outsource those or refer someone in BNI now. But but I was like, it's like, hey, if you're looking for a video, like let's talk and see what makes the most sense. So I got his number, set up a call with him, and after we chatted for a little bit, he was like, "Oh, have you ever heard of BNI?" And then at that time, I had heard about it from, other people. I'd heard about it from like YouTube videos that I'd watched and in some courses and classes that I had taken. So I was like, okay, I've heard about this, like, but what actually is it? And so when I went and I visited the chapter, I was like, oh, like this is actually really, really cool. And then when they launched the online only BNI Innovations chapter, I was like,
Mm,
this is great. This is like the networking that I need. And then it was also the convenience of being on Zoom. So I was like, and because I travel a lot for work, I'm the being physically present could pose a challenge. So I was like, okay, like this is perfect for what I'm looking for. And so at the time when I joined, I was at a point where, business was like it was going, but I was like, I was at a point where it was either going to be like, okay, like this is going to pop off, or I'm going to have to shut it down and find a job here relatively soon. And I was like, I figure I'll take the chance, take the risk on it because I mean, it made sense to me in all that. And then my first year, I doubled what I was doing as an independent freelancer.
hmm.
And then in my first year, and then my second year, I almost tripled that and then kept consistent with that for my third year. So
Wow.
it's been transformative for my business to say the least.
That's amazing, and I love that story so much. It's so great to hear so many different types of stories. I think traditionally when people think of joining BNI, it's like, "Oh, well, I was just networking and I just found out BNI and that was it." But the more I ask that question, the more interesting and interesting answers I get. So it really shows that there's any way people can find out about BNI, even though it's like what? How many years old is it? I don't know. It's pretty old.
Well,
Uh,
it's crazy too because the longer that I'm in it, the wider I find that the network spans.
mm,
Like an example of this was with one of my clients, we travel and we visit his clients once every month to do videos for them as
oh,
part of his marketing agency.
nice.
And so there was one time we were traveling to it was Virginia or like DC, like that area. And we were having dinner with one of his clients, and he's like, yeah, I've been trying this thing out called BNI, and it's been really really good. And he that company was a plumbing company, and I was like,
Mm,
and as soon as he said that, I was like, you want to count this as a one-to-one?
there
But
you go.
but it was cool because like then we got to connect over that and whatnot. But it was just cool to see how extensive the network is and how many people are a part of it.
Right.
Like another example is I had a friend of mine over in Portland, and he was like, "Hey, do you know anyone that could be like a good CPA for me? That's close to me." And I'm like, okay, I'm in Florida. That's complete opposite side of the country from you. But I was like I might know someone. Give me like a week. I'm gonna see what I can find for you. And so I did. I went onto the BNI Online Connect. I was like, hey, I put on like the search bar. It was like CPA Portland, and then I found one that ended up being in the same town that my friend grew up in. So
Wow.
like it was cool. And then I was like, hey, check out. Like I had a one-to-one with the accountant just to make sure that everything checked out, and he was like, cool. And then I linked them up. So it was just like, it was cool to see that in
Yeah.
action.
No, and I think that's so special. I've heard so many actually examples of that, of being able to refer cross chapter, and not just cross chapter, cross region, cross country. And I think it's something definitely to be said about BNI as a whole and the standards that we hold, that you can feel comfortable, doing just a quick one-on-one with someone in Portland, and then you're like, okay, this makes sense. I can really read this person. I can tell that they got their ducks in a row. I feel happy
Yep.
referring this person to, I'm sure, someone that, you care about. Like if you referred a dud to someone like that, you'd be really embarrassed, and it would suck for
Right.
everyone involved. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it's just incredible to see again how interwoven that the networks are. Like I've been able to pass referrals to India
Oh, wow.
and like um I I think it was from the round tables or something like that. I'd
Mm.
gone to like some one of like the online networking events. And I met someone there and they were like, "Hey, I've got someone for you in London that I'd like to connect you with." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so it was like a luxury real estate agent over in the London area that went between London and New York for business. And I was like,
Oh,
"Wow." And so, I mean, we after talking, we kind of found out that the budget wasn't there to for us to work together in any,
Sure.
you know, capacity, which is totally fine. But then it was great because I have a friend of mine who is like an hour and a half north of London, who's a great videographer, not in BNI, but I was like,
Sure.
hey, I know a guy, I'd like to connect you with him. And so, I was able to make that introduction just from my own network. So it's just cool to be able to again see everything working together.
Hmm. Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, I was just recently connected with a BNI member in Australia. And so
Oh,
you never
nice.
you never know. It's so cool how international BNI is. But Matthew, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun for me. I really love anytime I get to have an interview and I just get to like completely nerd out. So I really appreciate you taking the time today. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It was great to come on, and again, thanks so much for sharing the time.
Of course. And to everyone watching, I really appreciate you as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye.